There is only one test for truth, and only one feature or quality we can rely on and have faith in, and that is the logical coherence of our ideas and arguments. If logical coherence is missing from our speech or arguments, whatever it is that we are talking about cannot be true. If there is no logical coherence in what we say, the idea, solution, suggestion, policy, or proposition, or whatever else it might be, has no validity. This world we are in does not possess logical coherence. The economics of this world, its politics and religions, are all logically incoherent. The system we are in is founded on a logically incoherent proposition or foundation. Basically, the system we are in is grounded in the idea that there is no absolute truth and therefore no logic, and if no logic, logical coherence is not really possible. What is obvious is that logical coherence does not form out of an intellectual or informational vacuum. A statement cannot be logically incoherent unless there is a logically coherent version. The ideal must exist before it is corrupted and distorted. The ideal or logically coherent version cannot be derived from the logically incoherent form. It must have existed first because it could not have arisen later or from an unrelated source. If there is logical incoherence, it is because there is an intervention and the source of the intervention is evil. There is only one reliable defense against evil, and that is logical coherence. The author is way past worrying about how my theory reminds someone of what they reject. It is understood that one or two lines out of the many tens of thousands written may well remind the reader of something he or she read somewhere, which he or she disagrees with. There may well be something in what I write that suggests an association with something the reader has taken a serious disliking to, but whatever it is, my theory has no link or obligation to anything you have read. A priori apologetic and the theory of a priology are based solely on logic and logical deduction and rely wholly and solely on logical coherence for the truth they contain. So, whoever the expert is, the reader supports or denigrates, and whatever theory the reader has come to venerate or hate, this author has no interest in it or them. There is, we believe, the truth of God, and there is logic which exists because God's truth exists. God's truth is perfect because God is perfect. Logic epitomizes the truth of God, and logical coherence recreates or reflects the truth of God. There is no higher or perfect truth than the truth of God, and no more perfect truth than the truth exemplified by logical coherence. The truth of God is logical and coherent. What else can the truth of God be based on? What standard can it achieve or be judged by, other than by its own inherent and internal perfection? There is no perfection other than internal perfection or logical coherency. God is the highest and most perfect of all conceptions, and the only thing he can be judged by or compared to is his ability to be God, i.e., himself. I am the I am, says God, because the only thing he can be is himself. What can perfection be but perfect? There is nothing higher or more perfect than perfection. There is no truth that is greater than the truth. If there is a greater truth than the truth, that truth is the truth, and the other truth is not truth at all, but is an imperfect lie. In other words, there is only one truth, and there is no means to judge or rate the perfect truth other than to see how much more perfect is than a lie one compares it to. If there is no perfect truth, there is no destination to strive for. A lie cannot be a lie unless there is a perfect truth that the lie fails to reflect. If there is no perfect truth, how can one know in which direction one is headed? If there are only lies, one cannot strive to eliminate or even reduce the lies, as there is no perfect truth to attain to. The art of perfection. We all know that the police look for perfection. Law enforcement knows the truth is always simpler than a lie and easy to remember. But the key component of the truth is that it is logically coherent. One fact or event flows from another, and when looked at from start to finish, it all fits together. The truth is always simpler than the lie, and therefore, the prefect truth is the reality that is the simplest and most coherent of all possibilities. So, why cannot mankind be made perfect? Or, why do we all hold to the belief that perfection is not possible for us? The Bible clearly states, "Be ye perfect as our Father in heaven is perfect." The Bible does not tell us to not lie quite so often or for minor reasons. Scripture does not tell us to be the best we can be, but Scripture does not assume we will be in what God did not create. There are two realities. No one can be perfect in a reality where perfection is not logically possible. Nor can we expect to be in a perfect system that denies utopia is possible. But if utopia and perfection is not possible, how can we judge in what direction we are headed? How can our progress be mapped if we have no destination? To be perfect, we must be honest. Honesty breeds equality. When we are equal, we have achieved perfection. But equality is not some macabre notion of physical modular similarity. Equality is the absence of liabilities. No one has power over the other, and no one can claim authority over what another produced. We are each responsible for our own person and our own costs. This is the achievement of spiritual maturity. The spiritual mature are equal and perfect because they pose no risk and no liabilities. To be perfect is to be honest in the way we live. We create no costs for others because we pay for what we do, and we do not impose costs onto others or expect them to pay our way. This makes us all equals, and it binds us together. There cannot be any higher perfection than equality, and no other equality than we each pay our own way. So none is dependent on the other, and no one required to subsidize another. Perfection spells the end of parasitism. Parasitism is a state in which one adult remains reliant on the productive abilities of another. We are all born dependents. We all grow to physical maturity. However, some people never acquire spiritual maturity, and in this state, they become adults physically, but spiritually they remain as children, dependent on the state or perhaps their parents. Apriocracy, the rule of the logical to create total unity. Mankind has got himself immersed in an ideological framework that supports his worst addictions and indeed feeds into them. Many humans have a love of addiction and a desire to be controlled. Under this is a fear of responsibility. The addict is telegraphing his wish to not have to be responsible for himself. In his inebriated or drugged state, he loses all sense of control. Under this is the realization that his life is utterly meaningless and the choices he makes pointless. In the mind of a relativist, nothing has value, and so why struggle towards an end that has no value and nothing to make it better or preferable than any other end, including addiction or even death? For the relativist, every outcome is the same, and so there is nothing but the here and now. Addiction centers him in the now and enables him to forget the past and ignore the future. Addiction makes the addict forget how meaningless life is by the intensity of the now experience. The problem for an addict is that it gets harder and harder to stay in the now. The addiction itself keeps drawing him back into reality, and reality itself becomes harder to face. Apriocracy is a focus on the future because it is a way to make the future inevitable. Apriocracy removes the relativism and gives reality a direction. There is a trend to reality, a gradient in which things tend to move one way only, unless great effort is made to retard the trend. There is a logic in the world. It is not logical to go from logic to a logic. Logically, things must move towards a more logical state and ultimately to a state of logical perfection. This gives direction to reality and to history. Unless there is a considerable amount of force used to keep logic from being followed. Logic tells us there must be a God because there must be a beginning. There must be a creation no matter what one thinks followed this. There needs to be a point where things began. If not, then there cannot be an end. If there is no beginning and no end, then nothing and everything makes sense. If there is no beginning and no end, everything exists and nothing exists. Existence must have limits. Only if there is a beginning and an end is there direction and a destination. Only if there is a beginning and an end can we have history. Only if there is an end to which we aspire can we have morality. Without direction or destination, we are thrown back on law. The law is nothing but opinion turned into a regulation and enforced by statute. A law that is not enforced remains opinion. However, a law that is enforced is nothing but tyranny under the guise of reasonableness. The architect of the law says, "Obey the law, and we will not have to force obedience upon you." Democracy makes the victim complicit in his or her oppression. Because we voted for the ruler and the law he makes, we are complicit is what is done, and we become accomplices with the state in our subjugations, which is why it is so important that everyone votes. Summary: there are two world systems. One was the result of man's disobedience and is built on what Satan provided. Jesus was offered this world and its systems if he would worship Satan. Jesus declined. But this system still exists, and every person on the planet for 6,000 years has supported it and worked to make it better without questioning the foundation on which it is built. This is the system the church was charged with replacing. We are to abandon this system to build a new reality solely on Scripture. This world is in a spiritual war and the devil is winning, in that the system is not being replaced. Satan cannot win, but his system is falling apart. Everyone faced with this reality wants to find ways of making it work a bit longer. A priorian is not interested in helping the devil keep his world going. A priorian wants to destroy it. We want it to fall apart. And while we are sorry for all those hurt by the collapse of the system, a solution to their problem exists. It is on their head if they do not wish to embrace it.